So, Dave, I began, trying to sound normal. I want to make some modifications to my shed. Dave peered at the sketches. Uh-huh. Looks like you want to add bumpy bits on the roof? Crenellations, I supplied helpfully. Like on a castle. Dave scratched his head, looking from the sketch to the shed and back again. Crenellations, on a 10 by 12 shed, in Whispering Pines. Why in God's name would you want to do that? Long story, I said evasively. Involves the HOA, a questionable shade of green and 3/4 of an inch. Let's just call it an aesthetic upgrade. Historical flair. Dave chuckled. A slow, rumbling sound. HOA, huh? Say no more. Yeah, I can frame that up for you. Gonna look weird as hell, mind you. Like a Smurf castle. Excellent, I beamed. Weird as hell is precisely the aesthetic I'm aiming for. HOA fined me for my shed, so I transformed it into a medieval castle. Keep my name is Greg, and I live in Whispering Pines Estates. The name suggests tranquility, maybe the gentle rustling of conifers in a soft breeze. The reality is more like the gentle rustling of cease and desist letters and the soft breeze of passive aggression. It's the kind of meticulously planned community where the color taupe is considered wildly adventurous, and the Homeowners Association, led by the formidable Brenda McNally, patrols the sidewalks with the grim determination of a Cold War border guard. My life here was, until recently, aggressively unremarkable. I work from home as a graphic designer, which mostly involves arguing with clients about font choices and pixel dimensions. My hobbies include grilling things slightly past edible, attempting to keep houseplants alive, and enjoying my backyard. My backyard, crucially, contained a shed, not a majestic shed. Not an architecturally significant shed, just a shed. A standard 10x12 prefabricated number from the local big box store. It held my lawnmower, a rusty wheelbarrow, bikes my kids had long since outgrown, and an assortment of garden tools that mocked my attempts at horticulture. I'd assembled it myself over one particularly swear-filled weekend a few years back. It was painted a pleasant, unassuming forest green. It sat in the back corner, minding its own business, quietly holding my junk dot. My first mistake, apparently, was the forest green. My second, according to Brenda, was its precise location relative to the imaginary line dividing my property from Mr. Henderson's prize-winning petunias. Brenda, HOA president and retired office manager extraordinaire, conducted weekly neighborhood walkabouts. Armed with a clipboard, a measuring tape, and an encyclopedic knowledge of the Whispering Pines covenants, conditions and restrictions, CC and Rs, a document roughly the size and weight of a tombstone, she sought out infractions with the zeal of a truffle pig hunting fungi, minor deviations in mailbox height, unapproved species of decorative shrubbery, the existential horror of a visible garden hose. Nothing escaped her eagle eye. She caught me one Tuesday afternoon while I was trying to coax my Weber grill to life. Gregory. Her voice cut through the suburban quietude like a buzzsaw through butter. She stood poised at the edge of my lawn, finger aimed accusingly towards the back corner. A word regarding your auxiliary structure. I sighed, putting down my charcoal chimney. Brenda, nice day. The day was progressing adequately until my inspection of Lot 47, she clipped, marching onto my lawn. She stopped about 10 feet from the shed, eyeing it like it had personally insulted her lineage. This shed, it appears to be painted Hunter Forest Green. Am I correct? Yeah, forest green, I guess. As you should be aware, Gregory, Appendix C, Section 8, Paragraph 14 of the approved architectural guidelines clearly states that all accessory buildings must adhere to the pre-approved color palette. Hunter Forest Green is not on the palette. Acceptable shades include desert taupe, agreeable beige, subtle sandstone, and, for daring nonconformists, gentle grage. I stared at her. It's green, Brenda. It blends in with the trees. Mostly. Furthermore, she continued, whipping out her measuring tape with alarming speed, Bylaw 17, subsection C, requires a minimum 5-foot setback from all property lines for structures exceeding 100 square feet. Let's just verify compliance, shall we? She marched over and measured from the back corner of the shed to the fence. Aha! 4 feet, 11 1/4 inches. A clear violation, Gregory. A flagrant disregard for the spatial integrity of Whispering Pines. 4 feet, 11 1/4 inches, 3/4 of an inch. That was my crime against spatial integrity. That and an unapproved shade of green. Brenda, come on, I pleaded. It's been there for 3 years. No one's complained. It's 3/4 of an inch. Rules are rules, Gregory, she said, snapping her tape measure shut with an air of finality. Compliance is not optional. Expect an official notice and associated fine. You have 30 days to rectify both violations. She turned and marched away, leaving me standing there amidst the scent of lighter fluid and simmering rage. The letter arrived 3 days later. Crisp white envelope, official Whispering Pines Estates letterhead embossed at the top. Inside, the verdict. Violation #1. Unapproved color palette. Accessory building. Violation #2. Failure to maintain minimum setback. Accessory building. Fine. $250. $100 for the color, $150 for the 3/4 of an inch. Payment due within 30 days. Rectification. Required within 30 days. Repaint to an approved shade of beige, move the entire shed 3/4 of an inch, or face escalating daily fines. $250. For a green shed that was fractionally too close to a fence, the sheer mind-numbing pettiness of it all. I crumpled the letter, then smoothed it out again. Rectify. Oh, I'd rectify it. But moving it 3/4 of an inch or painting it agreeable beige suddenly felt deeply unsatisfying. My eyes fell on the offending structure. An idea sparked, fueled by years of repressed HOA resentment and possibly one too many documentaries about medieval siege warfare I'd watched recently. Brenda wanted compliance. She wanted me to change the shed? Fine, I'd change it. I'd transform it. She thought my little green shed was an eyesore? I'd give her something truly monumental to complain about. I grabbed my laptop and a beer. Operation Castle Gregskull, Suburban Backyard Edition, was officially underway. My first stop was the Whispering Pines Bible itself, the CC and Rs. I needed loopholes, ambiguities, cracks in Brenda's regulatory fortress. I found the sections she'd cited. Section 8, Paragraph 14 detailed the approved color palette for accessory buildings including sheds, garages, and pool houses. Okay, so Hunter Forest Green was out. But what if it wasn't painted? What if it was clad in something else? Bylaw 17, subsection C detailed the setback requirements for structures exceeding 100 square feet. My shed was 10x12, so 120 square feet. Damn. But wait, what defined a structure? What about modifications versus new construction? What if the footprint didn't change? Then I found Section 12, Landscaping and Decorative Elements. This section was much vaguer. It talked about garden walls, follies, statuary, and thematic garden structures under a certain height, 15 feet maybe, requiring only notification, not full architectural review, as long as they used natural or natural-appearing materials. The plan solidified. I wouldn't just repaint the shed. I wouldn't move it 3/4 of an inch. How would I even do that? I would transform it. I would keep the existing footprint and basic frame, thus arguably not creating a new structure requiring setback compliance. I would cover the offending green paint with natural-appearing faux stone. And I would add decorative elements, specifically medieval battlements, crenellations, arrow slits, maybe even a non-functional portcullis over the door dot. It wouldn't be a shed anymore. It would be a thematic garden structure, a folly, a miniature historical replica, a goddamn castle keep right there in my backyard. Let Brenda find that in her approved color palette. The next few days were a blur of obsessive research. I dove headfirst into the world of medieval architecture. Keep design, types of crenellations, merlons and crenelles, thank you very much. The optimal angle for arrow slits, or loops. The surprisingly complex history of the portcullis. My Pinterest boards filled up with pictures of Welsh castles and Norman keeps. Then came the practicalities. How do you actually stick castle features onto a flimsy prefab shed? Faux stone panels, surprisingly realistic, designed for interior accent walls but usable outdoors with proper sealing. Exterior-grade rigid foam insulation, easily carved into decorative shapes like coins or corbels. Liquid nails and construction adhesive became my new best friends, in theory. Lumber for framing the battlements. Plexiglass to cover the arrow slits. Gotta keep the rain out of the mower. Weather-resistant masonry paint in shades of gray and charcoal. I started sketching, overlaying castle elements onto a diagram of my shed. A simple, square keep design seemed most feasible. Flat roof replaced by a slightly higher flat roof, surrounded by crenellations. Faux stone cladding on all 4 sides. The existing door enhanced with giant black strap hinges and a decorative, non-functional, sadly, portcullis grid. Narrow vertical windows cut and glazed to look like arrow slits. Maybe a small flagpole on top for a custom banner, perhaps featuring a slightly annoyed-looking garden gnome. The projected cost started to climb alarmingly. The faux stone panels alone were several $100s. Lumber, foam, adhesive, paint, hardware. This spite-fueled folly was going to cost way, way more than the $250 fine. I paused. Was this insane? Was I about to spend a significant chunk of money usually reserved for sensible things like car repairs or retirement funds just to annoy my HOA president? I pictured Brenda's face, that pinched, disapproving expression, when she first laid eyes on a crenellated stone keep where my humble green shed used to stand. Yeah, totally worth it. Now come ama, my DIY skills primarily involve following IKEA instructions while consuming beer and swearing. Building battlements and applying faux stone required actual expertise. I needed contractors. Contractors who wouldn't immediately call the men in white coats when I explained the project. First, a carpenter. I found Dave online. Dave's handyman services, no job too weird, within reason. His reviews mentioned he was reliable, fair-priced, and had a good sense of humor. Perfect. I called him over, spread my sketches on the patio table. So, Dave, I began, trying to sound normal. I want to make some modifications to my shed. Dave peered at the sketches. Uh-huh. Looks like you want to add bumpy bits on the roof? Crenellations, I supplied helpfully. Like on a castle. Dave scratched his head, looking from the sketch to the shed and back again. Crenellations. On a 10 by 12 shed. In whispering pines. Why in God's name would you want to do that? Long story, I said evasively. Involves the HOA, a questionable shade of green and 3/4 of an inch. Let's just call it an aesthetic upgrade. Historical flair. Dave chuckled, a slow, rumbling sound. HOA, huh? Say no more. Yeah, I can frame that up for you. Gonna look weird as hell, mind you, like a Smurf castle. Excellent, I beamed. Weird as hell is precisely the aesthetic I'm aiming for. Next, the stone. Applying faux stone panels requires precision, otherwise it looks like, well, fake stone stuck on a shed. I found Tony's terrific tile and stone. His website mostly showed fancy backsplashes and fireplace surrounds. Tony, I said when he came by for an estimate, gesturing towards the shed. I need faux stone applied, exterior grade. Sure thing, kid, Tony said, all business. He had forearms like oak branches. What look we going for? Stacked legistone, fieldstone, river rock? More like medieval fortress, I said, holding up a sample picture I'd printed. Big, rough-cut blocks, grayish tones, maybe some darker ones for corner accents. Tony stopped, blinked, and stared at the shed, then at me. Castle stone? You want castle stone? On that? He gestured at the shed with a thumb the size of a small sausage. What, you building a dungeon back there for the missus? Ha, no, just enhancing curb appeal, I lied smoothly. Going for a sort of historical replica vibe. Tony shrugged, apparently deciding my sanity wasn't his problem. Whatever floats your boat, pal. Long as the surface is prepped right and the check clears, I'll make it look like granite quarried by serfs. Perfect dot. Finally comma the details. I wanted those big, black, medieval-looking strap hinges for the door. Maybe a fake portcullis grid to hang over it. I found Sheila's website. Iron Petal Metalworks. She made artsy garden sculptures and custom gates. Sheila, I explained over the phone, I'm working on a garden project, kind of a medieval theme. Ooh, medieval, she interrupted enthusiastically. Like for a Renaissance fair booth? Or LARPing? Sort of. More of a permanent garden folly. I need some decorative hardware. Big strap hinges, maybe a grid that looks like a portcullis but doesn't actually, cull ports? Totally. Wrought iron look? Distressed finish? Maybe some decorative rivets? I can absolutely fabricate that. This sounds awesome. Her enthusiasm was infectious, if slightly alarming. My team was assembled. Dave the carpenter, Tony the mason, Sheila the metal artist. Deposits were paid. My checking account let out a small, mournful sigh. There was no turning back now. Let the renovations commence. Dave arrived first, armed with lumber, a nail gun, and a look of wry amusement. Within a day, the simple gable roof of my shed had sprouted a rectangular frame around its perimeter, the skeleton of my future battlements. It looked utterly bizarre. Like the shed had tried to grow a hat and failed awkwardly, neighbors started noticing immediately. Mrs. Gable paused her weeding next door, staring openly. Mr. Henderson ambled over while walking his poodle, the infamous Fifi, survivor of the near drone trimmer incident from my other neighborly dispute, long story. Putting in a roof deck, Greg? Mr. Henderson inquired politely, eyeing the strange structure. Something like that, Bill, I said vaguely. Just some architectural enhancements. Brenda appeared that afternoon, naturally. Clipboard deployed, face set in grim lines. She marched right up to Dave, who was busy nailing plywood sheeting onto the frame. Excuse me, what is the meaning of this unauthorized construction? She demanded. Dave just pointed towards me with his hammer. I strolled over, projecting calm confidence I definitely didn't feel. Brenda, I said cheerfully. Just making some necessary repairs and aesthetic modifications, as requested by the HOA. Addressing the violations, you see. Repairs? This looks like new construction. You didn't file plans with the Architectural Review Committee. This clearly violates Section— I interrupted smoothly. But I'm not changing the footprint, Brenda, or the primary function. It's still an accessory building under 120 square feet. Section 12 allows for decorative roofline treatments, doesn't it? I wasn't sure if it did, but bluffing seemed appropriate. Brenda sputtered, momentarily flummoxed. She clearly hadn't anticipated this line of defense. She narrowed her eyes, took several pictures with her phone, made furious notes on her clipboard, and retreated, muttering about bylaws and flagrant disregard. Round one to Greg. Next came Tony and his crew with stacks of faux stone panels. This phase attracted even more attention. The realistic gray stone started covering the offending forest green paint, transforming the shed's appearance hour by hour. It went from looking like a shed, with a weird hat, to looking like, well, the beginnings of a very small, very square castle. Kids on bikes stopped to point. Delivery drivers lingered. The neighborhood Facebook group probably started buzzing, though I'd muted it long ago for my own sanity. Predictably, Brenda Sickhead code enforcement on me. A city truck pulled up, and a weary-looking officer named Peterson ambled into my backyard. Afternoon. He sighed, looking at the half-stoned structure. Got a call about unpermitted construction? Possibly an illegal fortress? Afternoon, Officer Peterson, I said, handing him a copy of the original shed's permit from years ago. No new construction here, just residing my existing permitted accessory building. Cosmetic upgrades only. No change to size, location, or use. I conveniently forgot to mention the battlements. Peterson peered at the faux stone. Looks like siding to me, he declared, clearly uninterested in splitting hairs over crenellations versus decorative trim. He glanced at the shed's location. Still looks a bit close to that back fence, but that's an existing condition, seems like. Long as you're not living in it or running a business out of it, looks like an HOA issue, not a city one. He handed back the permit. Just keep the site clean. He left. Brenda, who had been watching hawk-eyed from her porch, looked like she might spontaneously combust. Round two to Greg. Sheila delivered the metalwork next. The huge black faux medieval strap hinges looked fantastic on the shed door. Dave installed the non-functional portcullis grid above the door frame. He also cut 3 narrow vertical slits on each side wall, fitting them with smoked plexiglass. My arrow loops, the final touch was the battlements. Dave finished cladding the framed structure on the roof with more faux stone, carefully cutting the crenelles, the gaps, and merlons, the upright bits. It was perfect. Utterly, magnificently, absurdly perfect. Where my humble, slightly too green, fractionally misplaced shed once stood, there was now Castle Gregskull. A stout, stone-clad keep, complete with battlements, arrow slits, and imposing black hardware. It sat incongruously between my Weber grill and a pink plastic flamingo, a defiant monument to bureaucratic absurdity. I even ordered a small custom flag online, a rampant garden gnome on a field of beige, and ran it up a small flagpole Dave attached to a merlon. The unveiling, as expected, caused Brenda to achieve levels of apoplexy previously unknown to medical science. I saw her standing on her lawn, phone pressed to her ear, face puce, gesturing wildly at my backyard. Emails flew, rumors swirled. An emergency meeting of the Whispering Pines Estates HOA board was called for Thursday night. Topic: urgent action required. Unauthorized fortification at Lot 47. The community clubhouse meeting room was packed. Brenda had clearly rallied the troops, the Beige Brigade, the defenders of harmonious taupe. Stan from the flagpole incident was there, nodding grimly. Mrs. Gable looked torn. Mr. Henderson looked amused. Brenda stood at the podium, voice trembling with righteous fury. She presented a slideshow of Castle Gregskull from various angles, zooming in on the crenellations and arrow slits. She quoted bylaws like scripture, her voice rising as she condemned my flagrant violation of harmonious design, my unapproved materials, my structure wholly out of keeping with the established character of Whispering Pines. She demanded the board levy the maximum possible fines and order the immediate dismantling of the offensive fortress. Then it was my turn. I walked calmly to the podium, holding a copy of the original violation notice and the CC and Rs. "Esteemed board members, fellow residents," I began, trying to channel the calm reason Brenda so clearly lacked. Let's review the facts. Fact 1. I received a violation notice regarding the color and setback of my existing permitted shed. I held up the notice. Fact 2. I was required to rectify these violations within 30 days. Fact 3. I have done so. Murmurs rippled through the room. Brenda scoffed loudly. The violation regarding color, I continued, has been rectified by the application of a new, natural-appearing stone facade, as permitted under Section 12 for decorative elements. The original paint is no longer visible. Take that. Beige Brigade. As for the setback, I pressed on, the structure's footprint has not changed. No new foundation was laid. Under Bylaw 21, modifications to existing structures that do not alter the footprint do not trigger new setback requirements. Therefore, the original minor setback issue remains a pre-existing condition of the original permitted structure, which I am not required to alter. Bureaucratic jujitsu. But the battlements! Brenda shrieked, leaping to her feet. The arrow slits! It's a castle! Ah, I said, smiling gently. According to Section 12, thematic garden structures and follies are permitted. What you see, I gestured grandly towards the general direction of my house, is merely my interpretation of a historical garden folly. The battlements are decorative roof trim. The arrow slits are narrow accent windows. It is no longer functionally a shed subject to the strictest interpretation of Section 8. It is a decorative outbuilding. Chaos erupted. People started shouting. Stan yelled something about property values. Mr. Henderson was openly laughing. The board members looked utterly bewildered, flipping frantically through their copies of the CC and Rs. Brenda looked like she was about to short-dash circuit. In the midst of the pandemonium, Brenda apparently called the police again. 2 officers arrived, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. They conferred with the hysterical Brenda, then came over to me. "Sir," Officer Davis sighed, looking profoundly tired. "Your neighbor seems to believe your shed poses some kind of threat?" "It's a garden folly, officer," I said calmly. "Decorative. Stores my lawnmower. Poses a threat only to overgrown grass." "She claims you're creating a disturbance." "The only disturbance, officer, seems to be the HOA meeting discussing my taste in garden architecture." Davis pinched the bridge of his nose. "Look, folks," he announced to the room. "It's unusual, but it's on his property. It doesn't appear to be violating any city codes we enforce. Unless he starts launching flaming arrows or harboring livestock in there, this is an HOA civil matter. Keep the noise down." They turned and walked out, leaving the HOA board staring helplessly at each other. The board meeting ended in confusion and adjournment. They voted to consult legal counsel regarding the interpretation of bylaws pertaining to fortified garden follies, which was HOA speak for, "We have no idea what to do," and Greg probably won. In the end, their lawyers likely told them Brenda was right about the original violations, but that my rectification, while obnoxious, cleverly exploited loopholes. Forcing removal would be costly and uncertain. They sent me a letter formally acknowledging I had rectified the paint violation by applying the stone facade. They fined me the original $150 for the setback violation, which I grudgingly paid, framing the check with a memo line reading, "Payment for 0.75 inches of non-compliance." They also issued a strongly worded censure about failing to seek pre-approval for the extensive modifications, but stopped short of ordering removal. They did, however, immediately form a subcommittee to draft stricter rules about theming and historical replicas. Too little, too late. Castle Gregskull stands proud. It's become a bizarre local landmark. Teenagers take selfies with it. People giving directions now say, "Turn left at the beige house, then right after the medieval keep." Brenda avoids my gaze, her lips permanently pursed. She communicates solely through tersely worded emails about the mandated height of sunflowers in my front garden bed. I love my keep. I've kitted it out inside with some shelves, a workbench, even a mini-fridge stocked with beer. Sometimes, on warm evenings, I'll take a camping chair up onto the flat roof behind the battlements, crack open a cold one, and survey my tiny suburban kingdom. I watch the sprinklers hiss, listen to the distant drone of someone else's lawnmower, and see Brenda walk by, pointedly staring straight ahead, pretending my magnificent monument to spite doesn't exist. Was it absurd? Yes. Expensive? Absolutely. Worth every penny? Without a shadow of a doubt. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to research local regulations regarding moats and drawbridges, just in case.